All right, Amani Toomer is here, one of the best players in Giants history. He's in Jersey right now. We're all in the tri-state area. What's going on, buddy?
No, nothing much, nothing much. I got my rabbit's foot out. I hoping the Giants have a much better season than they
Oh,
had over the last couple of years. It's been tough. I do the post game show for the Giants,
yeah,
so it's tough. Like you don't want to, you don't want to lose credibility by just
yeah,
kind of fluffing over stuff. But then you see things that are just fundamentally wrong, so it's just tough. And I want the organization to do well. When the
yeah,
organization does well and has, you know, a long run into the playoffs, there's more interest, there's more things to
yeah.
do. It's just a much better feeling around here. So
I completely
hopefully the
agree.
Giants.
Yeah, I completely agree. And what's funny is a lot of times, and it's not you, because obviously you're a great of the franchise and all that stuff. A lot of times people are saying, oh, the local media hates our team or the beat writers hate our team. The hell they do. Good teams put beat writers' kids through college. Like you think
Exactly.
about like the Patriots
Yeah.
and I remember somebody I'm from Florida and I remember somebody saying like the local media in Miami loves Pat Riley, like loves him and goes out of their way to say we love Pat Riley. And I remember being down there one time and they were like, you know why they love Pat Riley? Is because they got the extra book deal because of Pat Riley, because they got the extra out of town radio contract because of Pat Riley, because they got the NBA TV deal from Pat Riley. Like Pat Riley significantly helped their lives. And so when people are like, "Oh, we want this team to be good," I promise you, the media never hates your team. They want your team
No.
to be good. So let's
Yeah.
start there.
Absolutely.
The 2025 season,
Uh-huh.
we know what it looks like roster wise, except the draft. There's probably not going to be some trade. We know what the quarterback room looks like, assuming Sanders isn't the pick or some Jackson Dart second round situation. Is the 2025 season salvageable as far as being a playoff team?
Oof. I'd like to see what happens during the draft. I'd like to see some of the late free agent signings because usually you can get a pretty good deal on a player that falls out of favor with the team that they're currently
Yeah.
on, where the contract negotiations or differences in personality or something like that, to where you can pick somebody up that can make a huge difference. Um, so I just look at this roster and I feel like it has some good pieces, but they don't seem to be working together in terms of making a real
Hmm.
like area where everybody is like on the same page. It seems
Yeah.
like a little disjointed. Like we have a great defensive line, and then one person gets hurt, and then the whole defensive line is, the depth of this roster is a problem. The tackling ability of this roster is a problem on defense. The big play ability on offense is a problem. The offensive line actually improved last year.
Mm-hmm.
The quarterback play didn't improve. The running game improved. It's just like one thing goes up
Yeah.
and the other goes down. It's like watching the stock market. It's just you want everything to kind of raise to the level of the entire team with the depth and in the roster kind of come together, which hasn't happened in a long time.
I'm curious if, I asked, we're talking about the changes they could potentially make. And maybe it's just organizational, how they look at it from a culture standpoint. I mean, I remember the Giants weren't really bad when I was growing up, like at all. Like there was
No,
a sustained success, even with Jim Fassel. Then
yeah,
you get in the Tom Coughlin era. There was a standard there that hasn't existed since Tom Coughlin went out the door, frankly.
mm-hmm.
If Mr. Mara calls you and says, Amani, I just want to pick your brain. What do we need to do to get back to that? What do you tell him?
I'd say we need to stop. Like most of the teams that are good are very limited in what they do in free agency.
Mm-hmm.
They go out and cherry pick a player or two, but really most good teams are built through the draft.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say the scouting department and the ownership and everybody that has to be there has to be more hits in the draft. You usually can tell a team how well they're going to do through the draft. The problem with the draft is it's delayed gratification.
Yeah.
You draft some player and you can't really evaluate them till 3, 4 years in. If you draft a player and they're a starter 3 years after in later rounds, that's a hit.
Yeah.
If you draft a player and they start 1 year and then 3 years later they're no good, that's a miss. So you got to take advantage of the cap when you take advantage of young players
Mm-hmm.
and lowering your cap, and then you can supplement it with free agents. So I feel like they need to do better in the draft.
Yeah.
Evan Neal, huge miss. Tavon Thibodeau, it's their jury's still out, but
Yeah.
it's not a home run fifth
No.
overall pick. Barnes, they're the corner that they drafted
Yeah.
a couple years ago. You got to be much more successful. Neighbors, I think he had a good
Yeah.
year,
Hit.
but I just don't know how sustainable throwing the ball to one receiver so much
Right.
is. Not to say anything against him, I just feel like he needs to become a lot more efficient to kind of really solidify himself as a top receiver in the league.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's still question marks. I think Tyrone Tracy did a great job. If he can stick around for 3, 4 years, that's a hit. But those are the type we need more Tyrone Tracys and less, Evan Neal's and Tavon Thibodeau's.
Yeah, no, I hear you. You mentioned neighbors. I mean, from my perspective, I just think a lot of that's quarterback play, and the neighbors' efficiency or whatever you want to call it will rise when there's a better quarterback, and we'll see what happens this year. Give me the best
Let's
receiver
hope.
in Yeah, give me the best receiver in football right now. All 32 teams, the guy who has the crown, the belt, whatever you want to call it, where you say this is the king of the jungle right now.
I'd say Justin Jefferson. I think
Okay.
I don't know. I just like his style. I like the fact that he's like a smooth route runner.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, I think I feel like there's a difference between being a route runner and just being a good receiver. Like he had the style in which he does it, the way he sets up defensive backs, the way he gets in and out of breaks, the kind of
Mm-hmm.
crazy catches that he makes. Him getting off the line is like, it's like watching, Bolitnikov just kind of like
Yeah.
doing dance moves and stuff. So I just feel like he's the guy to me that I would say that I would like like I'd pay to watch him.
Yeah.
Most other guys, I would just kind of like feel like it's a product of 17 games.
Yeah.
It's a product of the lack of man press that they play nowadays, and I just think it's much easier to be a receiver now because you don't have to worry about getting hit,
Yes.
um,
I was gonna ask about
going
that.
across the middle, the targeting and all that stuff. It just wasn't a thing. So I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of great athletes. I don't know. Uh, I don't know how solid of route runners I've seen over the last couple of years. A lot of the route runners I think are of I think the level of route running is a lot different because there's less man to man. So you
Yeah.
don't have to run as precise routes as you did, back in the day when they was just playing, single high safety cover one most of the time.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, about the biggest difference between when you came into the league in the 90s. Very, very different game. As you mentioned, you go over the middle. Like, first of all, this is going back a ways, but if you read about the 60s and 70s, you
Oh
didn't go
yeah,
over the middle ever. You didn't go over the middle ever. There's a book I
yeah.
read where they said the middle of the field, like when Raymond Barry was playing, was called the pit. And when you went into the pit once, you never went in again. Like you went in like in your third NFL game, you get your head ripped off, and then it's over. And now, even in your day, it was dangerous to go over the middle. And now,
Hmm.
you can just do whatever. I mean, you can do it every single route. You can if you wanted
Yeah.
to. You can just do whatever you want to do, and that's a good thing. That's player health and safety. And I don't want to see guys get their head ripped off. But
Hmm.
the receiver position is different. So I was going to ask you the biggest difference between playing now, if Amani Toomer was born in the year 2000 versus when he was
Hmm.
born,
Hmm.
what would be different about your game?
Um, I think I think it's easier to catch more balls now because
Yeah,
because of the shorter routes. I remember my first got in the league, like every receiver averaged between like 13 and 17 yards a catch
yeah,
because all the routes were pretty deep. Like you'd run a slant, which would usually get you like 12, 10, 12 yards, was like the short route. There was no go screens, those ones where you just step off and the ball guy throws you the ball. It just didn't happen. So I feel like it was harder to get a ball thrown to
yeah,
you, and plus the opportunities were a lot more down. I don't remember ever a receiver maybe Terrell Owens got the ball, like got the ball thrown to him like 18, 19 times in one game. That was unheard of.
Hmm.
Used to throw the ball as a team 20 times a game. It was a much more run. If you threw the ball 20 times a game, you were considered a like an average team in terms of a passing team because everything was so heavily uh, tilted toward the
Yeah.
run. So it's just a much more freer. It's much more fun to watch a football
Yeah.
game now. I'd admit than it was when I was playing. But in terms of the productivity of wide receivers, it's through the roof. And the fact that wide receivers are some of the highest paid players in the league is very, very strange to me.
Mm.
It's just a different way of looking at things, a different way of moving the ball.
So,
So I think it'd be easier now because there's way more opportunities. I always tell people if you throw enough poop up against the wall, something's going to stick. And I think a lot of these receivers are getting the benefit of that.
so I take it you think because I mean normally quarterbacks are paid for $60 million because of supply and demand. I've heard the argument. I don't know if I necessarily agree about hey, three great receivers come into the draft every single year. Why are we paying these guys $40 million or $35 million? I take it when you say you don't know why receivers are the highest paid, some of the highest paid guys. Are you saying it's just a supply and demand thing? There's just a lot of guys who can do it.
Um, a lot of guys that can play receiver.
Yeah.
No, I think there's a lot of guys that can do it, but there's not a lot of
Right.
guys that can do it great. I think
Right.
some guys that are just special. And I think
Yeah.
Justin Jefferson,
Yeah.
you know, for some reason I'm forgetting the guy's name. Plays in Cincinnati.
Jamar
Who was
Chase.
this? Jamar Chase. Yeah, I think those two guys are far and away above everybody. But I think Jamar Chase. It's just like, well, who's your favorite? What's your favorite
Yeah.
color?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I just like Justin's style a little bit better. It's personal. That's
Of
it.
course. Yes. All right. Here at Omaha Productions, we'd have to get Eli stories. You were
Hmm.
around young Eli. You were around Super Bowl champion Eli. You got it. If someone comes up to you on the street and says, "Give me the story that typifies what Eli Manning was like as a teammate, as a player, guy in the locker room," what are you going with?
Okay, so the first day uh, we have practice. I don't know Eli from anybody. I just hear stories. We practice a little bit. I don't really know him. And so he's the third string quarterback, and it's the first practice and like a mini camp, and everybody's just kind of like putzing around, and I'm worried, because I'm thinking he's the first pick overall. I'm thinking Ryan Leaf. I'm thinking some that type of attitude. I'm thinking these guys. I mean, Ryan Leaf had his issues and all that stuff. I'm just saying the attitude that he
Yeah.
had when he first came in, and some of these quarterbacks that think they hung the moon. And he's Manning's brother. I just don't know what he's like, right?
Yeah.
So then he's the third quarterback, and every quarterback, you do this thing, this drill where you kind of warm up your body, where they run a play on offense. Quarterback gets the ball, he hands it off to the running back, and everybody runs from like the 20-yard line into the end zone. And so Eli, his first snap as a Giant, and I'm looking at him. Everybody's looking at him. He takes the snap, he hands the ball off to the running back, and he sprints to the end zone and beats everybody. And I'm just like, oh, he's different. He's not like all these rest of these guys because he was down for day one. And I
Right.
remember in the meetings as well, like he's the third string quarterback, and
Yeah.
usually the offense coordinator, when they're installing plays for the day, they'll look at the person who's running the plays, and they're almost like they're talking to him and nobody else. So the coach is talking, and Eli's sitting next to the quarterback. I can't remember. I think it was Kurt Warner, and I think Jesse Palmer was in there as well.
Yeah.
And Jesse's kind of the backup, so he knows he's talking to our coach at the time was talking to Kurt Warner, and he's talking to him, and Eli is just like fully locked in,
Yeah.
like he's talking to Eli, and I'm like, dude, he's not talking to you, and he's just like
Yeah.
everything he says, he's like nodding, like yes, okay, and he's writing it all down, and I'm like,
Wow.
oh, this guy's different. Like
Yeah.
he just,
That's
and those
awesome.
little things are what separated him. So from then on, I was like, no, this guy. He's gonna be good. No matter, it's just a matter of if they give him enough time
Right.
because he's so locked in and focused, and he's so above all the. He's further ahead because he's a beyond all the trappings of being a quarterback. That especially being in New York, like you almost have to be just focused on the ball and not about anything else. And that's kind of one of the things I really admired about him coming in super focused, because I know I wasn't that way when I first got there.
That's beautiful. I love that. Yeah, and it checks out. Like, I'm not blowing smoke up anybody's butt here. You know Eli, like he's the
Yeah.
best. He's the best. We saw him last week at the owners meetings, and it's like, you know,
Oh, he's the owner now?
he, he was there to do a thing with Caitlin Clark and Serena Williams, and so when we
Oh, okay.
saw
So he
him,
was working.
and he was working, but
Okay.
it was he's the best. Peyton is the best. The whole I know we work for them, but like the Manning family is unbelievable. All right,
Yeah.
all right. We do a couple things. We're gonna start with badasses. Most badass person you've ever played with, any level. You have the floor, Amani Toomer.
Oh, I played with this guy named Walt Smith in college. He was a wide receiver. He was from Detroit, and he was a really good player, but he was like the toughest dude I've ever played with. Like, from this day, there's not anybody ever tougher than Walt Smith. He was number two, the University of Michigan. He would like I can't explain his toughness. He was just I remember. Okay, this is an example. So we'd have to run the mile and a half every uh, to test to make sure you run the mile and a half, and then you kind of, if you pass you have to beat your time, which shows that you've been running over the summer.
Mhm.
And so Walt hadn't been running, or he something had happened, maybe he was hurt or something, and he hadn't done it. He hasn't been up to the task, and I don't know if you've ran distance, but there's really no way of
Okay.
faking if you're in
No,
shape or not.
no.
Like, once you get to a certain level of pain, you just can't go
Yep.
anymore.
Yep.
And so Walt was gonna miss his time. I think he was on the last lap. I think he was like 2 minutes down or something.
Hmm.
And I was a freshman at the time, and I'm like, oh man, Walt's gonna have to get, because if you missed it, you had to get up in the morning, you had to do extra conditioning. And so Walt, like, halfway through the last lap, he just like hit a button and just took off, and he ended up making his time. And I'm just like, that's the type of toughness that you
Yeah.
really can't make up.
Yeah.
And then the way he would block as a wide receiver, he would just light people. I was just one of these guys that nobody on the team would mess with him. He was like five, maybe 5'10", 5'11", but nobody would mess with him because he was just, everybody knew Walt was not about that, not about playing. He was about his business.
Speaking of that Michigan era,
Hmm.
backup Tom Brady.
Hmm.
Did you see any of? Did you see it? Like, were you like, okay, this guy's got something, or were you just like, all right, this is the backup quarterback. He'll take over for Greasy. It'll be okay.
No, I thought, why would he come to Michigan? Because he had some ability. I thought he could have played
Right.
earlier. I was surprised he wasn't a first round draft pick, to be completely
Oh,
honest with you, because of what he had done on the field at Michigan
yeah.
and the quarterback history. All the Michigan quarterbacks, every quarterback that threw me a ball in college went to the pros except Jason Carr. That was it. All of them went. We had Scott Dreisbach, Jay Reamersma went as a tight end, Greasy, and Todd Collins and Elvis Gerbach. All those quarterbacks played in the NFL. So I just thought, okay, well, Tom Brady, he had his ups and downs. They tried to put in Drew Henson. I thought he was gonna be a first round draft pick. I was surprised he went so late.
Hmm.
And always knew he had the ability. I just never thought he'd actually get a chance to play.
Yeah.
So I was kind of surprised that he went. My brother came up after, because we're from the same area. So everybody from the Bay Area and the California, we all look after each other and or look out for each other and kind of keep tabs on each other. And I was just like, man, I just don't think he's ever going to play. And then I think what happened is he got tougher mentally
Yeah.
at Michigan because of all the stuff that happened between him and can't remember the kid's name, the guy who played for the Yankees.
Hanson.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Drew Hansen, Scott Hansen.
Scott Hansen's the Red Zone host, but yeah,
Oh yeah, it's Drew
Drew
Henson. Drew
Henson. Drew
Henson.
Henson.
Yeah, Drew Henson. Yeah, sorry about that, Drew.
All
No,
good.
no
All good.
disrespect.
No. Hey, that's what happens. That's what happens if you're not the best quarterback of all time. People confuse you with Scott Hansen. It's fine. You lost, Drew Henson. No, it's funny. In Seth Wickersham's book, they talk a lot about, like, basically he had a mental coach there who
Yeah,
who I'm sure
Greg
you worked
Harden.
with. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. Like, Brady walked in, was like, I'm going to transfer. And this mental coach was like, okay, good. Like whatever, go. And like almost like trying to toughen him up a little bit and just see like if you want to go to whatever UCLA or whatever, go, or
Yeah.
USC. But
Mhm.
like that, they were trying to toughen him up, and I guess, and it worked, as you said, it worked. All right, let's do one rep back. You get to do one play of your career over again. Do it differently. What are you going with?
Oh. Um, the play that I would do differently would be it's that's a tough one. I remember I caught a ball on a go screen. The corner was blitzing, and it was in Arizona, and I hadn't caught a touchdown in a long time, so I was like kind of thirsty for a touchdown.
Yeah,
Kurt Warner threw me the ball, I caught it, and I'm running to the end zone, and I just, I don't, I was gonna make contact right at the goal line,
yeah.
and for some reason, I like tried to push the ball out, and the defensive back just knocked the ball out of my hands, and I was just like on the 2 yard line, like he knocked the ball out, it went out of bounds, but I was like, I could have scored, like what the, it was one of those things. I'm just like, sometimes you have to go through a play, and then you're about to get hit, or something happens, and then kind of nothing happens, and you're just kind
Yeah.
of like, what?
The hell
So
was
that's
that?
like what just happened? Yeah, probably that one,
Yeah.
or any of the 2001 Super Bowl when we played against the
No.
Baltimore Ravens for that whole game. So, but somewhere between one of those two things, yeah, I wish I could have. There's so much I wish I could have had back that those two really stand out. The whole thing that stuck out to me was more of like a mindset that I was having, because I remember right before we played the Super Bowl in 2001, we were going to play the Ravens,
Yeah.
and our whole team was super distracted because the offense and defense usually switched off who got announced before the Super Bowl. And so when we went to the Super Bowl the night before the game, our coach is like, "We're going to announce the defense got announced before the NFC Championship game." So
Okay.
we all thought we were going to get announced in the Super Bowl. And so, the whole run out and all that stuff. And we were so upset that the defensive guys just said they wanted to get announced, so they announced the defense again. And we were so upset that I don't even remember any of the meeting. We were just looking at each other on offense because they break up so
Yeah.
first a team meeting. At the end of the team meeting, Coach Fossil says, "We're gonna announce the defense again." And he goes, "Well, I just think we're gonna announce the defense." And then he walked out of the meeting. And so then the offense and defense split, and we're in the meeting going over our opening plays of the Super Bowl, and we're so distracted that we're just like, "What just happened? Why are we not getting announced?" And I really regret like even caring. And we were just so distracted, and it was like the biggest. But just goes to show how young you are at those
Yes.
times. Like you don't know how stupid that is until like 5 years later. You're like, I cared about who was getting announced. Like it was stupid. But that's what I really regret that. I really regret being totally unfocused, going in the biggest game of my life.
All right, we got to flesh this out because it's just, if somebody's young listening to this, like, internet wasn't as big. 100 million people watch the Super Bowl. Like, getting announced before the Super Bowl would be the biggest thing. Everybody from your hometown's going to be clapping. Like, it was a big deal, but it wasn't that big a deal. We don't need to lose the Super Bowl over it.
Yeah, yeah. It was one of the only times as a player you could really kind of, you know, remember the whole squirrel dance? That was Ray
Yeah.
Lewis
Yeah.
during our Super Bowl doing his dance, and now it's famous. So everybody was trying to think of their little thing to do to kind of stand out because there was no internet, there was no Instagram,
Right.
there was no
No.
nothing.
No. That
And
was it.
if you didn't get an interview from um, if you didn't get interviewed on one of the networks,
Yeah.
there was no real outlet for you to
Yeah.
kind of show who you are and show your personality.
So did you know you guys were going to lose going into the game partly because of the
No,
distraction? Okay.
no, we thought we were going to blow them out because we
Okay.
had a great offense. They had a horrible offense. We had a good defense. They had a good defense. So we figured all else was going to equal out, and it didn't. We got blown out. We were super distracted. It was just so much to go about going to the Super Bowl. Like everybody's worrying about everything else but the game. Like
Yeah.
I remember Disney gives you this, you sign a contract with Disney that you're going to go,
Yeah.
say you're going to go to if you win the Super Bowl MVP, you're going to go to Disneyland. You say the whole I'm going to go to Disneyland thing. And that was a big deal at the time. And I was just thinking, oh man, if I have a good game, maybe I could go to Disneyland. And I'm just like, stupid stuff that has
Yeah.
nothing to do with the game.
Yeah.
And the Ravens were obviously locked in, and we, got blown out.
By the way, the next year, Rams Patriots, Bill Belichick famously announced the team as a team. He probably realized that the New York Football Giants were fighting over who was getting announced and said, screw this, we're never doing this again. And it kind of became a trend after that.
Yeah, because I remember when we went in '07, we didn't even have a conversation. Like nobody cared.
Yeah.
And that's I always say that's kind of one of the differentiations between a distracted team and a focused team. Like it never even came up over the 2 weeks. Nobody, even through the whole season, nobody cared. Like it wasn't something that you really looked forward to. But I don't know, it's different.
Wow. All right. All right. We're going to do Rock Bottom Theater. Worst game you were ever involved in. Game where you're on the sideline where you're just like, get me out of here.
Oh, I was involved in the Joe Horn cell phone game.
Oh, yeah.
I was on the losing side, obviously, but it was just so embarrassing
Yeah.
watching the Saints. I think they scored like 40 some points on us, and it was on like I think it was like a Sunday night
Sunday
football
night.
game.
Yeah.
It was just so embarrassing. Um, it was, Jesse Palmer was our quarterback, and because Kerry Collins got hurt, and
Yeah.
so Jesse went in, and it was just. I remember one of our offensive linemen, like Jesse was telling us a story about when he got sacked by one of the players that he played with at Florida, and the guy hit him and says, as he's getting up off of the pile, off of Jesse, he goes, "Man, the guy who's playing left tackle, he is soft." But he didn't say those words. And
Yeah.
he says, "Don't worry about Jesse. I'll be back in a minute." And kind of patted him on the butt, lifted him up, and it was just and then we had a player on our team who was out the game, and he came on the sideline. He was a little tipsy, and he would start talking trash to the defensive players
Yeah.
on the other team. And we had our whole backup offensive line in because all of our offensive linemen were hurt. And so we had like guys that were, you know, it's bad when somebody makes a tackle on special teams, and you're like, "Good job, 47." Who's number 47? But it was that bad. That it was. I think we won 3 games that year. But anyway,
Oh,
four
my
games.
God. Yeah.
So it was one of those games where you're just like, you didn't like me and Tiki and Dave Deal were the only starters on that team that played the whole season. Everybody else was out, and it was just I couldn't wait for that season to be over. I couldn't wait for that game to be over because that was like it. That was super embarrassing, and he pulled out the cell phone twice. It was just so Joe Horn just he Joe Horn and the Saints at that time were rolling, and we were just like a JV team out there playing a preseason team playing against a real NFL bona fide team.
All right. Amani Toomer, thank you so much, buddy. This was fantastic. We'll see you soon.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it.